you're running your business, whether it's in office, whether it's virtual, whether it's hybrid, and you're doing it primarily through Slack, at a base level, don't do that. Where the work actually gets done should not be in Slack. You should not be organizing your workflow because it's a communication channel. It's not a project management system. Hello and welcome to the Perpetual Traffic podcast.
The show where we talk about how to grow and scale your business profitably, and not the show where we debate the wonderful dining choices of yours truly.
Yeah, I don't know how you actually survive on it's like bird feed you eat all day. But anyway, I'm Ralph Burns, the founder of Jira 11.
I'm Lauren E. Petrullo, the founder of Mongoose Media.
And one day we are going to find out what the E actually stands for. We're so glad you joined us today. And of course, we have a Telegram group, don't we?
We do. You can come join us at perpetualtraffic.com/Telegram and be one of the cool kids. And,
cool kids.
Talk to us. Mm-hmm. Be our friends.
That's right. Be our friends. We need more friends, really. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about. Just more friends in your life. Today, we're going to talk about something that sometimes is not so friendly, though. Oh. Lauren E. Petrullo. People start so great with this because they think, oh, this is what you need to do when you're running either a virtual company, or I know a lot of companies that are not virtual and still use this tool. I'm talking about the thing that when I first was introduced to it, I said, there is no freaking way I'll ever use this because I think it was such a huge waste of time. And then I got addicted to it, and then it became overwhelming. And then we started losing productivity and not getting shit done at Tier 11, and I am talking about the one and only Slack.
It's the tool whose motto is make work life simpler, more pleasant, and more productive.
That's bullshit. Well, if it's used right, it can be a productivity tool, 100%. But you and I have both found that, and I have a COO who it comes from the software world, and he absolutely hates Slack. The guy who was sort of my, director of ops prior to him loved Slack. So that's what got us into Slack. But then we ended up relying on Slack, and then it just became this big, sludgy mess that we never got anything done. And went through a bunch of different project management systems, and that journey took a long time. So hopefully today's show, you will learn from our mistakes of the past. If you are struggling with Slack right now, like with notifications, with constantly getting pulled into conversations that probably aren't relevant to you, or just having to get notifications or things about stuff that isn't relevant to you, that's what this episode is all about here today. So we're going to depart from the marketing side of the equation a bit and go into productivity, because at the end of the day, most businesses run on some kind of form of electronic communication, whether you're in office or out of office. And Slack is usually at the center of it, at least in my experience. So anyway, so that is our problem we're going to try and solve today. So Lauren, you just did something sort of radical. You made a radical switch. You didn't tell anybody about this, which is, I guess, great in one way of just getting shit done. But I probably would have maybe, taken a shot across the bow to begin with. But what exactly did you do today in Slack that had tremendous ripple effects throughout Mongoose Media?
To be fair, some people do, because I was in a meeting and we were talking about Slack inefficiencies and how communication is happening in ClickUp, in Slack, in all these different places. So some people knew, but I said on the meeting, hey, what if we just remove all the performance marketers from that client internal Slack channel and keep it just the project manager, admin, and client success manager, so that they can discuss the client and then keep all the conversations to ClickUp. And I got, that sounds like a great idea. Let's try it. It should be more efficient. That feedback was so overwhelming that I just went nuclear and did it to nearly every single internal client Slack channel, to which those not in the meeting
not really privy.
Yeah, they were like, what happened? Is this not a client anymore? Am I not a pack member anymore? So if you go nuclear, just like, no.
Yeah, maybe
Or
announce it like this is all right instead of just saying. It's kind of like when my wife bought the RV to take us cross country. I told you that story, I think, when I was in Florida.
Mhm.
She's like, "Yeah, do you like this RV and this pickup truck to go cross country with the kids for a year and a half?" I was like, "Yeah." I was reading the newspaper or something like that. I'm like, "Yeah, that one looks pretty good." And then she went out like the next day and bought both of them. And she's like, "I bought them today." And I said, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Well, last night you said you liked that RV and that pickup truck." I was like, "Well, what are you talking about?" She's like, "Yeah, I bought them both. Like we're starting the trip on June 10th. This is like 10 years ago." But anyway, like just mentioning it in a meeting or like a casual conversation, you should probably do a little bit more than just once, but that's okay. Like when we switched from overly relying upon Slack, we actually migrated from Asana over to Jira. And the Ryan is our CEO, who's been on this show at least once, came from the software world. So Jira for me was like a huge change. But what it did, it cleared out so much in Slack. Like we stopped getting work done inside Slack and used it for what it really needs to be used for, which is a communication channel. And just quick back and forth, updates, that kind of thing. We have a tier 11 Slack for internal communication. We have a tier 11 Slack for external communication with our clients. And I just went through like a bunch of different channels on the external side. It's pretty quiet. It's like weekly report. Here's some financial metrics. Like there's not really much in the way of requests. We still have our performance marketers in there, but they're largely silent because our client success owners are the ones that do most of the communication with the client. So I can see what you're saying, like pulling them out. To them, they're probably like, do I still have a job? But then the flip side is did the client actually know?
So this was actually for the internal Slack. So the Mongoose Media house Slack channels. That all the client, because we have meetings all the time. Like we have our PACE meetings on Wednesdays. So it's our all hands. We have dedicated team meetings, right? So tomorrow morning, we have our marketing automation all hands. So everyone related to quiz, chatbots, email, and SMS are in that meeting. Yep. Then we have our PBC, all media buyers come into that meeting. So we have department meetings. We have our all hands pacing meeting. It's just in the internal Slack, it was chaos. And then it's like, just either wait for a meeting or discuss the task work inside of ClickUp. But for external clients, we actually don't put performance marketers in our external client Slack channels by exception, or if they're like in our highest tier where they're, spending at least $350,000 a month in ad spend, for example, they will get access to their media buyers directly. But for the most part, we actually keep it to just the client success manager and then the strategist, so that they can control it. Because what we found harmful in the past before when we did it, sometimes we have PAC members at Mongoose Media that don't receive communication the way that some clients would give it out. So there would be further miscommunication. There'd be an aggression of on either side. So we over communicated or the client over communicated and it became a stress factor. So like the best way I think about it is if you were a performance athlete, right? For LeBron James to play, for example, stole this from Robbie Cannon. He's not responsible for cleaning the floors. He's not responsible for having the water filled up. And when I had my performance marketers in clients' external Slack channels, because we have our private direct channel, they would then have to do everything outside of media buying, outside of performance, which then took away from the whole point of their role on that task. So. Yeah. Oh, I couldn't do that externally without letting them know. Oh my gosh, that would be like
Armageddon.
Yes.
Well, I mean, for some of those clients, in most cases, they probably, if you actually took your performance marketers out of the external communication channels, it probably wouldn't make that much of a difference because most of them are not communicating directly with the client anyway. You say like your CSM, we call them CSOs. Client success managers, account managers, whatever it happens to be. If you're in the service-based business, call it whatever you want to call it. The point is like they're handling the direct client comms, and then secondarily a strategist. So if I go into a tier 11 client channel, I see our CSO, I see our strategist with most of the communication. Rarely called upon would be the performance marketers themselves, because that has to go through the proper channel. And I think if you're not set up that way, it's utter chaos. Because you've got clients talking to your performance people, and this is what happened to us. Like this is a change that did occur, years back. The point is that like you got to follow the chain of command. The chain of command, like as you grow and scale as a business, you've got to go through the proper channels. And if this is new news to you, then you might not be at that level of scale. But if this is like, oh, of course, but you're probably a little bit higher level of maturity as a business. The point is like there are ways in which to eliminate a lot of that chit chat on the Slack side. Like for your internal stuff, which is huge as well, because it can be a major time suck if it's not managed correctly.
The other thing too is like when we have media buyers that will switch over occasionally because they're bringing in a different perspective.
Right.
So it's like, hey, we have media buyers that take vacation. Like that's allowed. Yeah. Right. And so when we've had access to the performance team in the past, what we failed to do then was set communication expectations, because then it became, we were always on call for a lot of those clients. And because the performance marketer cares about performance, wants to make sure that they can answer any questions, how is this ad performing, all these other things. The client actually then started dictating a lot more of the strategy. And we'd find that the account executive, client success manager, or your client success owner, it gets left out of the conversation, because then they're like, what do I need you for? I'm going direct to the source. Right. But let's be honest, a lot of those performance marketers aren't the most organized. What they're good at is a different skill set. And then the client success manager is like, let me make sure I'm keeping time for when we have our meetings, that I'm addressing all the pieces, that I'm sourcing you the information right away, that I'm following up with you and having all the communication touch points. Right. Whereas the performance marketer might want to, but then like an emergency came in and then another emergency came in, and then they, like the client, start to define what an emergency is, which most of the time it's actually not an emergency at all. It's just I need to check it right now. And so it feels that way. And then it just becomes notification bloat, communication overload. So when you're not at high levels of ad management, you don't need all of that direct access. So anyway, that's for us. But internally, we took it out as well, because we'd have like the copywriters and the design team asking questions that the media buyer didn't actually need to know about, but asking the project, it's like all of that could actually have been discussed inside of ClickUp.
Right.
So boom, bye birdie. I pulled the lever.
Yeah. No, it's good. It's good because where the work actually gets done should not be in Slack. You should not be organizing your workflow, getting work done, communicating about the actual work. That should be done because it's a communication channel, right? Yeah. It's not a project management system.
Right.
And that project management system, choose whatever you choose. For us, it's Jira. We went through Asana. We went through Trello. I think we had Podio at one point in time.
Yeah.
Going in reverse order. Like that's kind of what our progression was.
Sure.
And I remember when we switched to Podio, it was like, oh my God, we have a project management system. We're not managing the client on email. Like this is going back a few years. It's like 7+ years ago, probably at this point. But the point is that we gradually migrated everything away from email to start, and then got better and better, more refined systems, all the way to the point now where it's completely run. I mean, as I go, I don't really go into our Jira all that much, because that's not really what my job is. My job isn't like to get the actual work done. I get work done through other people, and Jira is a tremendous way to do it. And I mean, I get involved in the marketing stuff and the sales side. There is that. Maybe occasionally get assigned something, but all I see is stuff flowing. And the burn down chart in Jira is like our Scrum masters are like very, very proud of those. As the work actually gets done, the actual work itself sort of follows on the burn down chart as it gets completed over time and through sprints, everything else that goes along with how you manage things inside Jira. And it sounds like ClickUp, although I've never used it, is sort of similar to that, or like what are the compare and contrast it? I don't know how much you know about Jira, but
I used Jira once upon a time. Similar, like actually before ClickUp, we were using Asana. Rike was the only one that you didn't mention that I really liked before ClickUp.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's almost all project management tools use the same integration, like interfaces, dashboards, the way they're viewed. But yeah, like for me, why I like ClickUp more than Jira essentially is because like in your ticket system, at least how we had used it before, it was so coding forward that like the creatives and the social side never understood it very well. So the onboarding part was harder, whereas ClickUp had all these really nice videos. And then just personally, the way the hierarchy is set up, and I don't know if Jira's changed, but we have like space, and then we have like 6 different spaces. One of our spaces are retainer clients, and then we have our internal residency, which are our training clients. And then we have inside the retainer clients, each client has their own folder. And then inside each client's folder, there's a general task list for every client. And then we have a service-based task list with all the automations, with all of the triggers and all the workflows and the templates set inside. So like the PPC list, the emails list, the blogs list, all of that have their own set standards. So for us, when a client opts in for us to do blogs for them, we just create client list for blogs, and then it allows us to import all the automations, including emails that notify the client automatically when a task custom field status has reached a certain point. Anyways, that's a lot of words for I love ClickUp.
And there's I assume that once one task is completed, it automatically triggers the next task, like similar to like that's basically one of the best parts about Jira to a certain degree. And I love, there's what they refer to as a Kanban board, which sort of shows like how everything is sort of progressing along a time frame.
Yeah. So there aren't necessarily automatic elements. So going in from the ClickUp side, we originally did templates for tasks, and then it would create all the tasks necessary for that launch with like codependencies and must be finished before this one. But that ended up becoming like a dashboard nightmare. So what we actually do is per service deliverable, we have a custom field that does like that type of service task update. So it's not the status like to do and progress review, but it's the status of like if it's a video or if it's a blog or if it's a PPC campaign. And then that change of that custom field, when that changes, it then has a triggered workflow that creates the next task in line.
Got it. So the point is if you're running your business, like whether it's in office, whether it's out of office, whether it's virtual, whether it's hybrid, and you're doing it primarily through Slack, and I know there's a lot, like there is this whole other level, like at a base, like tip for this podcast episode here, at a base level, don't do that. If you have gone to Slack, you're frustrated with Slack and you're not really sure what the next step is, any of these are actually good. Like, for us, Trello served its purpose. Asana served its purpose. Jira now is serving its purpose. It did take a while for folks to we had to do, Agile Scrum training for the entire company, went through a certification process. It's fairly high level. I would say if you are struggling right now with too much Slack, at the very least, go to some of these other methodologies. I think the reason why we went to Jira is because the software background, learning things like the way that our whole workflow now really, it does work. so much better, so much more smoothly than it used to. And I think it's just a result of people understanding like sort of where everything is inside the software itself. You don't necessarily have to go to that level. I think ClickUp, and I know you and probably about a half a dozen other people that I know that are in our industry are relatively speaking, in the general vicinity of like the digital marketing, industry, use ClickUp and love it.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's relatively simple to implement.
You say that, I will give the caveat to anyone that's like looking at a PM tool. ClickUp is like a Google sheet, an Excel sheet, infinite possibilities. But when you open it, it's just a blank spreadsheet. Right. But I will say that whether you're using Slack or ClickUp or Asana or Trello, it doesn't matter. You could be using Google Sheets as long as you're using it and you're updating it as your true source of truth. That's amazing. The reason why I went nuclear on Slack, especially internally, was because we've had so many like new pack members, past pack members. Like we're growing and evolving. Like we're a team. And so when new people come in, it takes longer to learn ClickUp than it takes Slack. So then it started sucking all of the legacy pack members into Slack to discuss work because they weren't using it. And then the legacy pack members are like, well, if they're not using it, then it's faster. Because for sure, Slack can be faster, but it's not efficient.
Right. And that's the key is efficiency. So who actually did the implementation for ClickUp? And what did you use before then? Or have you always had ClickUp?
No, we had Asana right before we had ClickUp. And actually, I was the one that led the implementation. One of the biggest lessons I learned was I had hired someone to be our first operations manager, and their approach to ClickUp was different than mine. So I recognize that I've championed the vision of ClickUp, but we're in probably our third or fourth iteration of how we organize everything. And the most recent organization probably happened 2 years ago, where it's the client has their own folder, because before that we had client had their own space. That was actually championed by the team giving their feedback. So I'm personally like in ClickUp. I really like it. I love building the automations. It's like my organization, but we do have a full-time project manager. So she owns it. So she creates the dashboard. She optimizes our workflows. She vets our SOPs against how they're being iterated for the triggers that notify a client via email for this, or pulls an API using Make to create the Google Drive folder, put it inside this custom field, and it's stored in the right place. Right. So, no, I'm in it, and I love geeking out about it. That if anyone's in our Telegram group that is looking at ClickUp or wanting to improve their ClickUp, like, oh, I've got you.
So if you look around for project management softwares, like one of the two that we've never used, which is really hot right now, which is Monday.com. Yeah. Another one, we trialed Smartsheet, and for whatever reason, we didn't go that direction. I don't exactly remember why. We did have, we had multiple clients that were on Reiki for years, and for some
Reiki,
reason,
wait,
yeah,
is that how it's supposed to be pronounced?
Think that's how they called it. Did you just call it Reich?
I've called it Reich. WRIKE. It's Reiki. Like, wait, isn't that the massage where someone like vibrates their hand over you?
Let's look it up. What's the proper pronunciation?
Reiki. No, that's Reiki.
Reiki. That's Reiki, like the warm hand thing. Oh yeah. Well, either way, we'll get the pronunciation for that. That's what these guys called it. I thought it was a nightmare. But it was not managed well. Like the key is to actually have somebody that oversees this. Like we've got a Scrum Master who oversees everything that happens inside Jira and sort of like quarterbacks the whole thing, which is another FTE that, like, if you're doing this, doing it at scale, you really do need that person
100%.
kind of 100%. So we found that that's really, really important. And that woman has like been with us now for years and years and went from a media buyer role into this role and is doing a great job. The point is that this is something that I think if you're going to make the leap, like you need somebody to push it forward, and it's probably not going to be your CEO or your COO.
No. Like it shouldn't be me. And I hate that. until we hired project managers full time, I was the biggest champion, and like I'm really good at ClickUp. And so it became a default, hey, Lauren, I have this idea. Can you help me? So it kept coming back to me. And I think I'm probably using like 40 or 50% of what ClickUp is capable of. Like we're not using sprint points, but I know that it's 99% better than anyone else I've met. So now with the project manager, they're taking the ownership and they're running stronger, because the time I spend on optimizing ClickUp for one person might take away from strategy or from stuff that I'm specifically good at. So yeah, I highly recommend, if you have numerous projects, numerous team members, lots of different communications, like have someone else be the traffic manager. So that's where I like what I talk about traffic manager from the project side, which is why part of the nuclear decision of removing everyone else, because people were all at different competing priorities for tasks and they were discussing them in ClickUp, and our project manager couldn't traffic which one goes first in the queue so that we can manage workload capacity, because someone's talking about this in the Slack channel. So it seems like it's a higher priority, but in ClickUp, we communicated that this has a time sensitive event. So this limited time event for a Facebook campaign standpoint trumped this automation flow. So like that kind of stuff doesn't get discussed. Context is missing from Slack. Slack used to work really well for us for anything that took 2 minutes or less. Okay. But now how we've been using Huddle within Slack is for me, my communication is I'd rather just video call you really quick.
Yeah.
I don't want to text it and type it, because the other thing too is why I like find Slack to be the death of productivity for me is that like I'll have it on my phone, it'll read the message on my phone and not my desktop. So I'm on my desktop, but it happened to be opened up. So then I end up missing conversations.
God, yeah. It happens so many times. Yeah, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. I really like audio messages on Slack for like quick, like if I try to get something instead of writing it, and then it'll do the transcription. Mm-hmm. So super good there. I use the video feature like for like announcements, things like that.
Oh, what?
Yeah. Record a video clip in Slack. Like we have an announcements channel, stuff like that, like company wide, like if I need to get something out.
Yeah.
So like most of our channels are just like this quick communication kind of stuff.
Sure.
And, we do have individual channels for clients, but like nothing really goes on there. And we do have like we have individual pods. We've got 4 pods. So those pods all have their own individual Slack channels. Like some I'm in, some I'm not. It sort of depends on my, involvement with the clients that are in that pod. So it's like since we switched over to Jira full bore, like about a year ago, I probably spend 10 to 20 times less time inside Slack now.
That's significant.
It's huge. I mean, I used to be like, oh my God, look at all my unreads, look at all the threads. And I would be integrated into like all the problems and all the work that's getting done.
Yeah.
The flip side is that in order for me to get a better sense as to what's happening, I have to go inside Jira and see what's going on there. If I've got a specific project, especially on marketing and sales, because I'm more involved there. But most of the stuff now is like quick. Like I can read my unreads literally like in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And the app on Slack, there's sort of that new feature where you just kind of like thumb through everything just to kind of get up to date.
Oh, like Tinder swiping?
Yeah, like Tinder swiping. It's great. So if you're not using those features, I would say those are 3 productivity features that definitely do make a difference. But if you're spending too much time in Slack just in general, like if you're spending hours a day in Slack.
Oh, it's been like 40.
If you're Kevin, let's do that again. If you're spending hours a day inside Slack getting work done, that's too much. I don't know what your like threshold would be, but now like I'll keep it open during the day, but it's like half hour, maybe during a normal business day that I'm in Slack, which is a major improvement for what it used to be like a year ago.
Oh, a year ago, it was like 4 to 6 hours a day for me. Like most of my stuff was, but the same thing is I wasn't the doer. So I wasn't in ClickUp doing the tasks. I would be overseeing it. I would be delegating it out. But yeah, 4 to 6 hours a day was Slack. And the other part that, like, let's be honest about Slack thing, it would be the first thing I checked in the morning.
Oh yeah, totally.
I don't like that concept of always being on demand. Because I'm getting messages on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, email, text messages, WhatsApp messages, all like phone. I'm just like, oh my gosh, burn these notifications down to the ground. I've made myself too available. So I'm not at that point where you have reduced. Again, this is just like literally day one where we went nuclear and removed all the performance marketers. For the most part, everyone's really grateful because they're like, I didn't need to read half of this. It was like notification bloat. Yeah. So I'll provide updates like, is it helpful? Does it allow communication direct where it's like, I'm just going to do a quick huddle with you, go over it. Do our meetings become even more efficient because now we're coming together more prepared to discuss? That would have been like a quit Slack thing. But we're not getting rid of Slack by any means. Like we'll still have it. So like the house team, the client success manager, strategist, the admin, all of them can be on the client Slack channel. Mm-hmm. And then we have like the announcements. We have my favorite channel is actually called Crushing It. And then we have like the orange crush can emoji cool. Where people can shout out someone that's helped made their day better or who's contributed to a project. And I end up like using it all to like factor in, compensation, elements of stuff I get to present at various marketing things like, you did that? That's really cool. Let me now tell the world. Mm-hmm. So there are those that are like water cooler. We have one that's for like K-dramas because we have a lot of people on our team that watch K-dramas. We've had a health and fitness one. So like the team did like a running challenge a year ago. So they all checked in on if they did their exercises for the day. Those kind of things, 100% stay in Slack. Don't put that anywhere near my ClickUp because ClickUp is for work. But yeah,
I would almost think left Slack is like if you have a hybrid organization that you're running or your department is hybrid, or if it's virtual, or if it's in-house, chances are you're probably using one of these tools. I would look at Slack as not a place to get work done, but also to instill the company culture.
Yes.
Too. It's like, just going through the unreads and I wouldn't say it's even recognizing, but just acknowledging people doing good work. Or like we have a You Are Awesome channel, which is like we call out one of our core values, and it's like, pat on the back kind of thing, attaboy, attagirl. Yeah. We've got like a team AI channel. We have a guitar talk channel. We have like, it's more like an out of office thing. Is like, is that person out of office? I'll go to the OOO channel. News, like people drop in news of stuff that's relevant to the whole company, and I'll read those like when I have time. I mean, and then there's the individual pods, and then we have like if we do our team meeting once a month, there's a backstage channel which is like prep for that meeting or what it's going to be, and then the summary. So it's like things like that. So if I look at Slack now versus a year ago it was getting work done and just a slew of crap, and which just I was stuck in like 4 to 6 hours a day, easy. Yeah. Now it's more about like acknowledging good work, communicating, instilling company culture. Me as the CEO, sort of like getting the message out there, acknowledging good work. Keeping an eye on things, making sure like we have a team payroll channel, make sure everyone gets paid. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like stuff like that. Or like we have a Stripe agency, like, for our social stuff, we have a social sharing channel that just shows like all our posts, things like that. It's more like keeping in touch with the company as opposed to getting the work done. And I think that's the big difference between today and versus a year ago. And I think if you as a business owner or heading up a department are using Slack to get work done, you're using it for the wrong thing.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
And it's a time killer. So We'll leave links in the show notes to some of the stuff that we talked about here today. There's actually a really good article that compares all the different project management softwares. We talked obviously about ClickUp here and Jira. I don't know that much about Monday.com, but there's quite a very, very good reviews out there. That's the one that I don't know as if we ever really considered going that way, but that's one of the better ones.
We've looked at it. Their marketing budget is massive. I'm in all of their retargeting. Their ads are well done. So kudos to whoever is running those paid campaigns. But I'll just be honest. I've got ClickUp socks. And Scott Cunningham, who's like one of the co-founders, I don't know what his role is. He like one time like DM'd me on Instagram being like, hey, you talk about ClickUp a lot. I was like, I know, I'm obsessed. So they like backdoored me into this like future loyalty. Also because what I pay for a year in ClickUp is probably what most people pay for a month with any of their project management tools.
That's perfect.
If you're listening, ClickUp, don't you dare change my pricing.
Yeah, if they're listening, maybe they should sign up as an advertiser for the show. But anyway, the point is this, don't use Slack as your project management tool.
No.
We'll leave some links in the show notes for some of these reviews and some of these other softwares. This is killer. Congratulations on making a bold move inside Slack. I think more business owners should do the exact same thing. And hopefully this was helpful to you listening on one level or another here, no matter what your business is, and especially if it's virtual. I think Slack is an essential tool for
Teams or whatever your like calm thing is, like your culture stuff. 100%. Like I will say, if you're a business owner though, or like a VP of marketing and want to like again, I use Crushing It as a way to do performance reviews because I see other people nominating others to talk about where someone may have facilitated someone else and that team player, because that's really hard to understand in a virtual environment when you're not looking at people physically going into offices together. But we also have a Shark Tank channel. So, oh my gosh, Ralph, I really think you should add this. I got this from Jeff Hunter. I totally stole this from him. A Shark Tank channel where anyone can introduce a tool or an idea. And if they introduce that tool and we end up using it, I pay a bonus to the person who made that introduction. Plus I'll use their affiliate link. So it becomes this like pitching channel of things that we want to do. That's how actually like 2 of our department services came from Shark Tank submissions. That's cool. Just a like, you don't have to do all the work yourself.
That's right. It's amazing what happens when you let other people just do their best work. You might actually build something great in the process. So this has been great. Make sure that wherever you are listening, you leave a rating. We love ratings and subscribing to our Perpetual Traffic podcast here. Go back and listen to previous episodes. Of course, we will leave links in the show notes over at perpetualtraffic.com. You can, of course, watch this over on our YouTube channel. And I don't need to even tell you what that is. That's perpetualtraffic.com/YouTube. And of course, join our Telegram channel, perpetualtraffic.com/Telegram. Like I said, that's 3 calls to action right there. It's completely confusing. Exactly not what you're supposed to do as a marketer, but who cares? We make the rules here. We'll allow it, at least this time. On behalf of my awesome co-host, Lauren Petrullo.
Ciao.
Till next show. See ya.